Now, viewers, India's retail inflation has come in, and it is now the number is at 5.48% in November compared to the estimate of 5.5%. This is after having risen above the RBI's upper tolerance level in October. In fact, Pallavi is joining me to tell us more on this. Pallavi, is this close to the estimate versus expected?
Right. It's actually bang on. 5.5% was the estimate, and that is the number that we've got today. But let's also take a very quick look at some of the key internals. Now, consumer food price index has come in at about 9.04%. So we have seen some easing in prices there on an annual basis. This figure was at about 10% or slightly over that in the last print that we had seen when inflation rose above the RBI's tolerance range of 4 plus or minus 2%. Inflation last month was actually a tad over 6%. It had come in at about 6.2%. We have seen a little bit of a reduction then on. And a look at the internals shows that it's broadly on the back of vegetable prices, again, broadly as expected. Vegetable inflation has come in at about 29.3% for the month of November. In October, this figure was actually slightly over 40%. Let's also look at what food and beverage inflation is. That's come in at about 8.2%. Clothing and footwear has come in at about 2.75%, housing at 2.9%, and fuel and light continues to see a contraction at about 1.8%. But let's quickly get in Madhavi Arora from MK for her quick thoughts on this. Hi Madhavi, welcome to the show. And what are you taking away from today's figures? Broadly in line with your expectations as well?
We see no surprises in the numbers. We were close to around 5.43 on our forecast. And the market is also nearly tracking a 5.5, so not much of a surprise on this front. We were looking at food inflation also coming close to a 9.1%, which is what it turned out to be. I think the bigger surprise was on the core inflation, where you are seeing a consistent fall. In fact, the sequential fall in core inflation is, a sequential weakness in core inflation is something which is, again, reflecting the weak domestic demand to some extent. Last 2 or 3 months, you saw an uptick in core inflation, which is largely led by personal care and effects, which was reflecting the increase seen in the gold prices, which have stabilized in the last particular month. And thus, you have seen some relief in terms of month-on-month increases in, core CPI inflation from the likes of around 0.4, 0.56% that you were seeing in the last 2 months. It's come down to a 0.2% in November, which basically meant that you are, after having seen a pickup in core inflation for the month of September and October, the November print has again come down to a sub 3.8% on core inflation, while headline obviously is still driven by food inflation, which is running 9% plus, on a annualized basis, even though it has come down on a sequential basis, helped by correction in the perishables led by fruits, vegetables, and to some extent even meat and fish.
All right. I do want to ask you, what is your outlook going forward? We did see the MPC also very recently revise its projection on inflation, and CPI inflation for FY25 is currently being projected at about 4.8% with Q3 at 5.7%, and then consequently a little bit of a dip with Q4 at 4.5%. Is that broadly in line with your expectations? And if that's the case, is that largely led by vegetables? Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, we've already had of RBI in terms of our numbers. We had upgraded our forecast much before the Reserve Bank. We were tracking 4.9%, and that number doesn't change, which is no surprise in this month. Uptick in RBI focus obviously came from up to surprises that they saw in their inflation reading, which is what led them to also revise up the forecast. Nobody was expecting a 6% plus % in the month of October. And as you rightly said, the last quarter of this financial year sees a sequential fall on the back of the base effect as well. But overall for the year, we are still looking at a 4.9%, which is obviously much higher than the RBI's durable inflation target of 2% that they have been seeking over the last few years.
All right, Madhavi, before we can let you go, one quick question on, what these prints possibly mean for the next MPC meet scheduled for February. And are you also, of the belief that we will very likely see a rate cut in the February meet?
We'll see how it goes. As of now, we will be seeing a very different MPC by January of next year, because we most likely will also have a new deputy governor in case if Dr. Patra's continuation doesn't happen. And also we'll also be having a very nascent external members team. So it's still too early to make a view on the MPC sitting today in December. But of course, the way they've laid out the policy reaction function, the last policy, it sort of gives an indication that they are prepared to probably ease policy conventionally or unconventionally. We'll have to see how much rate cut window that they actually have, because the global dynamics have become very fluid. So it's very tricky and a very small window that they have in terms of rate cuts. That's why they did a CRR cut, so that whenever they cut rates, be it February or be it even in April, they should be able to immediately transmit that rate cut in the economy because of better liquidity. And obviously we are seeing a mounting FX pressure as well, because RBI has been trying to sort of intervene. That is also costing the economy indirectly in terms of liquidity. So we'll have to really weigh all of these things before taking a call. It's no longer a linear rate cut call that you're looking at. Even if there's a cut in February, it doesn't mean that you're looking at series of rate cuts.
All right, Madhavi, thank you so much for taking time out for us. So along with data for inflation, we've also seen industrial output come in. That's come in at about 3.5%, broadly in line with expectations there as well. But Malika, with that, back to you. Interesting set of numbers and in line with what was being expected.